What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So with the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom out earlier this year, setting all kinds of records, people were wondering, what does Nintendo do next? How do they top Tears of the Kingdom? Well, in a recent interview with E.G. Aonuma, he at least shed some light as to their thought process going forward for maybe a new game or even a remake. We'll go over that, though, here today. Also, we are going to be taking a look at some of the leaked specs, apparently, for the PlayStation 5 Pro, as well as a timeline for when developers could be getting their hands on this upgraded system. And we also have to go back and take a look at that OD trailer from Kojima, because apparently there's a hidden message in there, and, well, it just sounds like Kojima being Kojima. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure to hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. We're gonna start today with Free Radical and Time Splitters. There's a lot of concern around that game maybe being canceled after Embracer has been going through all kinds of issues, looking to consolidate down and cut costs, which to me sounds like, hey, if this game is not coming out in the next 2, maybe 3 years, yeah, we're gonna have to cancel it and shut down the studio. And unfortunately, it looks like that is the case here, as we can see this over on the website. This is for Free Radical. Yeah, 404 company not found. And to go a little further, we see Mark here, who's the senior artist at Free Radical Design, saying it's been a great 2.25 years at Free Radical Design. Sad to see us go. Onwards and upwards. Wow, it feels like they barely got the window tint or the window cutout there on the back for the doors before apparently it's just shut down. And very unfortunate to see just in general, because it felt like Time Splitter fans it finally got figured out. They're getting a brand new game in this series. Going to be revived, could be really, really awesome. And now here we are with Embracer going through so many issues that they have to seemingly cancel it, or at least they're looking around and realizing Time Splitters, let's be real, probably wasn't going to be out for a while, and they might not know if they could even fund this project for the next year at this rate, the way they're going. So yeah, they had to cut it, unfortunately. And who knows what that means for Time Splitters? I assume it means we're not going to see another one for a while, if ever, because at this point, we have to hope that Embracer can make some sort of comeback and then maybe revisit this project down the line. Also, if you missed it, I made a video yesterday detailing the situation with The Day Before, because it took a ridiculous turn as the studio just shut down. They just closed 4 days after releasing this game. And now over on the Steam page, you can see Valve has actually pulled the ability to buy this game in early access. It was up for quite a while after they had made that announcement, that being fantastic, that they were shutting down. And apparently they're just gone. They're using the money to pay back debts, is what they were saying. And yeah, now it looks pretty bad from the outside, right? I mean, the trailers they had shown everyone, it made it look way better than the game actually was. And based on some numbers going around, they had sold anywhere from 200 to 300,000 copies of this game on Steam in the first few days, and about half of those were refunded. So we're talking millions of dollars potentially that could be maybe an escrow and a holding account with Valve. And the hope is that Valve is able to just outright refund everyone for this game, because it looks like a scam, and I don't usually throw that word around, but it does not look good in general there. It looks like kind of malicious. So yeah, if you did buy The Day Before, I recommend going in and attempting to get a refund, as people are saying that they were able to do so even if they were outside of that 2-hour time limit window. Oh, and here's a pretty funny story for GTA 6. Of course, the trailer accumulated over 130 million views in the first day or two. It was ridiculous. And someone else noticed, who apparently was in the trailer, kind of. That's from the Florida Joker. Now, they had put out a video on TikTok, as well as you can see this screenshot here from Kotaku, just kind of pasting all the images together to give you an idea as they compared themselves to the screenshot in the trailer. And it appears that their name's Lawrence Sullivan, or the Florida Joker, has to have a talk with, they say GTA 6. I assume they mean Take-Two, or they mean Rockstar. But what's really funny is the voice of Arthur Morgan also posted up a video, that being Roger Clark, I'm sorry, saying, hey, they know what they're doing. They have a lot of lawyers themselves. They know where they are with parody and kind of where they're skating the line here. So I would use it to your advantage and say, hey, I'm in GTA 6, and just kind of use that maybe for notoriety and to do things even outside of just asking Rockstar and Take-Two for a couple million. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with The Legend of Zelda and sort of the future now after Tears of the Kingdom. It is hard to imagine what they can do to top Tears of the Kingdom, specifically in just the scope of the game, going from the sky to the ground level, then even below that into like the catacombs. There's a lot of stuff in this game to explore, but it does appear, as you would expect, yeah, they're probably going to make another game in the Legend of Zelda series. So in a number of interviews, I picked out two different sites. There was Game Informer and there was IGN. They asked some questions about the future and also what they thought of some of the fans asking for, maybe even longing for, maybe that more traditional, more linear style Zelda game. Now, the first set of questions I want to go to is from Game Informer. This is with producer E.G. Aonuma and director Hidemaru Fujibayashi. Now, Game Informer asked, Tears of the Kingdom plays off Breath of the Wild, but the addition of Ultra Hand adds so much to the core experience. It now feels so integral to the experience and so important to those more casual fans that you mentioned bringing in. With that in mind, do you think we will see Ultra Hand return in future titles? Now, they respond saying, what we want to do from a game creator's perspective is create something new. From that perspective, I don't think we'll be seeing Ultra Hand in every Zelda game or anything in the future. Okay, so we know Ultra Hand, the idea of kind of creating, it was almost like bringing Minecraft into Zelda. That was a good comparison most people were making. But to remove that does remove a core component of Tears of the Kingdom that set it apart from Breath of the Wild. I believe they're still going to go in the direction of the open world setup, but instead of Ultra Hand, that's where they would have a different kind of twist. And if you have Ultra Hand, would that make it feel too much like Tears of the Kingdom? Yeah, I could see that. So I understand why they say, hey, we're going to do something completely new. So Ultra Hand, that would just kind of remain as a Tears of the Kingdom exclusive, if you will. Something to really make that feel like the unique title in the Zelda franchise. After this, I do want to jump over to IGN, where they say, it's interesting to hear you say that because of the discussions that I've seen among Zelda fans. Gosh, I miss the more traditional linear Zelda of the past. And I'm wondering, how do you feel about that given the direction of the series toward a very free-form, open-ended kind of design? Aonuma responds saying, well, I do think we as people have a tendency to want the thing that we don't currently have, and there's a bit of a grass is greener mentality, but I also think that with the freedom players have in the more recent games in the series, there still is a set path. It just happens to be the path that they chose. So I think that there is one thing I kind of like to remind myself about the current games that we're making. But also it's interesting when I hear people say those things, because I am wondering, why do you want to go back to a type of game where you're more limited or more restricted in the types of things or ways you can play? But I do understand that desire that we have for nostalgia. And so I can also understand it from that aspect. I will say that the open world Zelda game does just have a different flow and a different feeling to it. And at times, I'm sure it's an overwhelming feeling for people, whereas the more, I don't even want to say traditional Zelda game, because technically the first Zelda game on the original Nintendo was fairly open-ended. I mean, there were some parts you had to kind of do in order at times, but for the most part, you just kind of went and explored in the world. Now, you sort of had that a bit with Link to the Past, but they had a set path technically in mind to kind of funnel you around. And I feel like that linear style is one that people will grow to miss as we go along and get more and more used to these open-ended, open-world style Zelda games that can feel like you are being overwhelmed with all the choices in front of you. And for me personally, I like the dungeon design more in those linear Zelda games because I feel like they have more control and can set up a more satisfying path through the dungeon, as opposed to these open-ended Zelda games where it at times feels fairly generic, or the idea of hit these 5 points or do these 5 or 6 things in each specific walled-off area that we have set up. It's not quite there yet for the quality or kind of the cadence that we had with those traditional dungeons back with something even like Ocarina of Time, which, speaking of that, let's take a look at the last question I have here. This from Game Informer saying, thank you both so much for your time. I've heard about how sometimes questions about games can inspire them to be made, so I selfishly want to ask you about a modern Ocarina of Time remake, but I have a feeling I know the answer I'll get. And E.G. Aonuma apparently laughed and said, no comment. So, that's interesting. Now, Does this mean, oh yeah, we're getting an Ocarina of Time remake? Not necessarily, because it doesn't want to rule it out and say, well, no, we're not working on that now. And they're obviously not going to say, well, yeah, it's out next year, look out for that, until they're ready to announce it, that is. But I wouldn't be shocked if we did get an Ocarina of Time remake. I'm not talking about the 3DS one necessarily, where, of course, they dressed it up, visually looked better, sure, but like, actually go and remake it completely, maybe alter some of the mechanics, and maybe it's sort of a reimagining of Ocarina of Time. I'm wondering if they would push the envelope that far. That's the question there. But at least for the time being, unless we get an Ocarina of Time remake in the next year or two, I think the path forward is open world. It's hard to dispute that with the sales that they get. They're going to stick with it, especially with really the cost of games going up hundreds of millions of dollars probably to build the next original big budget Zelda game. Yeah, the open world stuff sells well. You know, like, why not stick with that? And I think that's what they're looking at. Okay, traditional Zelda games selling a quarter of what we're getting out of Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, we're going with the open world concept from here on out until the wheels fall off, really, is the way I would look at it, and they'll just keep building on top of that and trying to refine it as they go. Next up, let's talk about the PlayStation 5 Pro that I'm fairly convinced is coming out next holiday, 2024. After seeing everything that happened from that Tom Henderson report so far come true with the PlayStation 5 quote-unquote Slim, and then the PlayStation Portal, which sounded absolutely ridiculous, yet here it is. Yeah, the PS5 Pro is probably the one that makes the most sense out of all of that, coming up next year. And now it appears that randomly some specifications for the hardware just popped up online. From what I can tell, the reason that the PS5 Pro was trending is because a post on Reset Era just started going over all the little details about how this system is going to achieve, apparently, a better or more stable 4K and even 8K. Now, the post in question is here, and it is just all over the place. It's difficult to read, but then Zubitech did seemingly take a lot of this information, put it into something that's a bit easier to put on screen for you here for the PS5 Pro, and I still think a lot of this is going to be really, I would say speculation, subject to change, whatever you want to call it, mostly because things like frequencies, those can and probably will change, even down to CUs changing here and there from 64 to 60 to 56. So you can see the wide-ranging 14 to 29 teraflops. The big thing, though, and we see this from patents, is that they are going to focus on hardware ray tracing. So they're going to work to accelerate that more so than they have now, which would just make it more viable in games, since that does tank the frame rate quite heavily across the board, whether it's for video cards or consoles. It is something that you notice when it comes to performance after you hit the little toggle to turn it on there. The RAM would still say the same, however, the storage, 2 terabytes, yeah, I think it's going to be necessary as we go forward because games are definitely not getting any smaller. Now, Tom Henderson, who, of course, was the original report on the PS5 Pro being real, did comment on this somewhat, saying, I can't comment on other people's leaks because I don't know, but internally, Sony is expecting full specs to leak this month because of dev kit distribution to third-party studios. And I feel like the timeline makes sense to get dev kits out roughly a year ahead of time. So if we think this system, say, could be launching in November of 2024, yeah, you feel like developers might want to get started on working on this newer updated PlayStation 5 with patches or just shipping their games next year or even the following year just with a PS5 Pro mode ready to go in the settings. And I know people are still going to wonder, what's the point of this thing? It's more for the enthusiasts. I feel like this is probably going to come in right around $600 with no disk drive. That's very much no disk drive attached. You have to buy it separately. So keep that one in mind. But I feel like this is mostly going to be for people, yes, who are enthusiasts, who want that 4K, 60, no compromises technically there, and then like 8K 30, I guess, and we'll see better ray tracing. 8K is still the question mark for me because I just don't know many people calling for it, like at all. Although this would be Sony, and they produce TVs, so in their mind, somebody's got to get this thing kickstarted for 8K, and maybe it's us. So let's release a PlayStation 5 Pro that is capable of pushing those kind of visuals and that resolution, and maybe that'll get the ball rolling a bit more because it's just, there's not a lot of demand for 8K right now. Everyone seems pretty satisfied with their 4K 60 or their 4K 120, and that's kind of it. So I'm curious to see if we hear more about specifications, if dev kits truly are going out sometime this month, because it seems like we're trying to whittle it down to like the exact details, but we still have a bit of a range going on right now. So we'll see if anything gets out there as we go through the month of December. Next up, let's talk about Hideo Kojima and his new game, OD. This is the one he's working on with Microsoft and Xbox Game Studios. Death Stranding 2, of course, he's working on that with Sony. So kind of playing both sides here, which is great for Kojima Productions. Why not get money from both Microsoft and Sony? And it seems like Microsoft is, this one is a bit more experimental, I guess, much more outside the box than even something like delivering packages in Death Stranding. And, of course, it's Kojima, so he likes to hide Easter eggs here and there and do weird things in his trailer. And it is kind of strange that someone noticed this, but who knows? Maybe they were really looking in at like the characters' faces and noticed some letters popping up in their mouth. Take a look, this posted up over on X. This is from Central Xbox. I did have to translate this from Portuguese over to English, but it says, it was discovered that during the OD trailer, some letters appear during the frames. They form the word Atami, which is a city in Shizuoka in Japan, and you can see the kanji there. They say that the kanji literal translations, when you split them up, is quiet or silent, and then hill, as in a call out to Silent Hills, I guess, which was originally PT. And it kind of fits if you think about the fact that he came out of a door that was being closely compared to the door from PT. And then he's also hiding letters that when put together means Silent Hill or Silent Hills. So I don't know if this is actually linked to OD, or he just wanted to throw this out there as like a, hey, this is the game I wanted to make back then, and now I'm taking it to the next level. And it's kind of that, maybe even that sense of I'm throwing this in Konami's face by hiding that original title in this new trailer that I have. It's certainly thinking outside the box, but also it's Kojima, and I'm not surprised at this point for stuff like this. I mean, even that stage presence was absolutely ridiculous. The door, the smoke, the whole deal. And I don't know what the game is, but well, it's off to an interesting start. I do like the idea of Kojima doing weird stuff like this, Easter eggs, fourth wall breaking stuff. Who knows what we have in store for us with OD, but we'll keep an eye on it, and I'll see if anything interesting pops up as we go along so we can try to piece this Kojima puzzle together. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Xbox Game Pass and the potential for it being free. Well, kind of free. So you would pay with your time, and that time being spent viewing advertisements. Now, this is over on Windows Central, and we can see at the top here, they say Microsoft Gaming CFO Tim Stewart recently described how in the future, you may be able to view ads to gain access to Xbox Game Pass. Now, interestingly enough, Windows Central says that recent code strings for the Xbox Series X and S seem to corroborate this, with the ability to earn 15-minute blocks of Xbox Game Pass access in exchange for watching ads. Now, I guess this isn't too different from what we see with, for example, like Netflix, I think Amazon does, essentially, or Hulu did it for a while, I know, and probably still does. There's a lot of streaming services, they just all kind of blend together now, but the idea being, you'll get a commercial-free experience if you pay twice as much. But if you're willing to pay half that amount, and you want to sit through 30 seconds of commercials every like 5 or 10 minutes or something, well, there you go. It'll be cheaper for you, technically out of the bank account, but you'll have to spend more time watching all these ads and product placements just in front of you. And I mean, for some people, it's fine. They don't mind going through it. I mean, for a while, growing up, you just had blocks of commercials that were like 3 or 4 minutes. It would always be funny when you'd get a DVD for a series and you pop them in, you're like, oh yeah, that's right, these episodes are actually 21 minutes long because the other 10 minutes were just commercials. We spent a lot of time watching all kinds of different ads back then. Technically, this wouldn't be as much then, but you would pay in 15-minute blocks. So if you watch an ad, you get 15 minutes. And then it cuts you off in the middle of gameplay, and then you watch another ad. I'm not really sure how that would work, or maybe you just bank your time as you go along, so you can just sit there for 10 minutes, watch a bunch of ads, and you're good for the next hour. That's the thing I think Microsoft needs to figure out, because it's a bit easier to interrupt just something you're watching, harder to interrupt something you're in the middle of playing, especially if it's a competitive game maybe that's online. So that's the part I'm curious how they figure out. But this, not too surprising, Microsoft figuring out more ways to get Game Pass in front of more people. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, which is a Game of the Year Madness showdown. Kind of. It's between The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, and Octopath Traveler 2, which, yeah, Zelda ran right over Octopath Traveler 2, kind of as you'd expect. Although, 84-16, not a bad outing for Octopath Traveler 2. It was going up against, like, one of the Goliaths in the tournament right now. It's like Zelda, Baldur's Gate. I guess you could throw, like, RE4 and maybe Metroid. I don't know. Metroid might be going up against Mario. We'll see how things shake out here pretty soon. But yeah, things starting to heat up in Game of the Year Madness with some of these matchups getting pretty serious over the next couple of days. And we'll finish up at the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Matt, who says, that diagram from Fortnite is the sort of thing I was imagining when Sega said Super Game, a hub of sorts that would provide access into a variety of games and IPs that could interact with each other. So doing something in one game could influence something in another. Yeah, that was sort of the way I was envisioning it, kind of a platform. But then now recently, they've been describing it as just an outright game. I don't know if that's to throw people off, and they're still thinking we're going to make something like Fortnite, which has now morphed into a platform, but we'll introduce it at first as a game and then build on top of it as we go along. And now Fortnite is just like this world, this metaverse seemingly, this game engine that you can build into, and it's unrecognizable from how it started. Maybe that's Sega's plan. Comes out around 2026, but then they build on it for 10 or 15 more years, and all of their intellectual properties become part of it, and they can all interact with each other. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was the future of Zelda? What do you think about the comments of maybe the traditional linear style Zelda games just kind of being a figment of nostalgia for people now? And do you like the idea of just more open world style Zelda games like what we see with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom? Then also, what about a PlayStation 5 Pro? Would you be interested in picking one of those up? We'll say for about $600 if it guaranteed 4K 60 or even 8K 30. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.